Hey everyone, and welcome back to OntarioCyrptids. What a gorgeous day for a party. Today I'll be attending my niece's daughter's 4th birthday party. Wow, that was a mouthful. For this reason, this episode will be a tad short, maybe, we'll see. I will be sharing one article regarding a Bigfoot habituation, which I found recently, and this article, well, it is a bit lengthy, so we shall see how long or short this video will be today. Just a reminder, next week will be the 105th episode, which means it is time to share some of the OC community most favorite Sasquatch Bigfoot videos, or some of you may like to refer to them as blob squatches. So please send in your favorite clips so we can keep this tradition going. On another note, I have put up a poll on the community tab of this channel regarding live streaming, so please head over there and vote. Okay, if you've had an encounter story that you would like to share, then please forward your stories to OntarioCyrptids@gmail.com. I will be more than honored to share your story with like-minded people. Go grab yourself a beverage and get cozy in your favorite spot and sit back and relax. Okay, so these encounters started in 1970s onwards, and it takes place in Pierce County, Washington, and the nearest town is Orting. The article is written by NCN News under Archaeology and History. It was written on March 12, 2022. I will leave a link below. And the article is titled, "The Woman Who Faced Bigfoot Multiple Times and Even Talked to Them." Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch, is by far the most well-known and well-cited cryptid in history, a real rock star of cryptozoology. These enormous hairy hominids have been observed and researched throughout North America, and there have frequently been some quite bizarre and peculiar reports. One such baffling incident is of Sally Shepherd Wolford, who not only saw a Bigfoot once, but 4 times. What is stranger than sightings of Bigfoots are the odd accounts of persons claiming to have lived in close proximity to these enigmatic animals, making thorough observation and even building friendships and talking with them. It is truly a one-of-a-kind occurrence that is as bit as odd as one might think. This phenomenon is commonly referred to as Bigfoot habituation, and witnesses are frequently referred to as contactees, and one can almost see it is as analogous as Dian Fossey and her gorilla cohabiting and studying one another. There are numerous such cases, and one fairly significant account of Bigfoot habituation comes from the wilderness of Washington State in the United States, and centers on a witness named Sally Shepherd Wolford and her family, as well as being an account that perhaps transcends simply hairy hominids encounters to truly catapults into the realms of high strangeness. Wolford resided in the 1970s near Orting, Washington with her daughter Autumn, who appears to be the story's focal point. They lived here in a rustic, modest, slightly disheveled cabin described as an 1,133-foot wooden box with holes in the floor and a cold water faucet, surrounded by quaint wilderness and a sea of trees. But almost immediately upon their arrival, strangeness began, and Wolford stated in an interview with Jeffrey Pritchett of the Church of Mavis radio show on this day. When we walked out to view the river, I knew we would live there. When we turned to walk back, my ex yelled, "Race ya!" and disappeared into the woods. I couldn't recall where we'd come out, so I took the most obvious path. I picked wildflowers as I walked, expecting him to do something to scare me, like jumping out from behind a bush and screaming. That was when I noticed the woods had become dark and completely quiet. When I looked up, the sky was filled with ominous rolling clouds. I shivered and realized I was not alone, and the presence I felt was not that of my husband. I screamed his name and turned to run, then a terrible smell wafted by on the sudden breeze. The woods erupted behind me, and I turned towards the sound of ripping foliage. As I watched, something huge and hairy disappeared into the trees. Charged by waves of fear, I began running again, but I tripped over a root and landed in the wet sand. I lay still, catching my breath. When I looked up, I noticed the sky had returned to normal. Puffy white clouds stretched peacefully in a pale blue sky. Birds twittered from behind perches. The fragrance of spring in the forest filled the air. The presence was gone. I summoned up my last bit of courage and retraced my steps until I came upon the spot where I had dropped my flowers. Off to the side of the path, it looked like a tank had gone through the thick underbrush. Then the destruction just stopped. I looked for a place where something that large could have gone farther, but there was none. Broken branches hung like dead snakes as I looked up into the overhanging limbs. I spied a tuft of brown hair caught on one. It was too far up for me to reach, but I finally managed with the aid of a stick. When I pulled it down, I winced at the rancid smell. I would never forget. That's when it hit me, just how huge that shape had been. The funny thing was, it had run away just like I had. We had scared each other. For the next 4 years, the family allegedly received frequent visits by these Bigfoot-like creatures, with several sightings of the beast prowling about, generally approaching quite closer, and frequently they were seen by friends and neighbors as well. There were also numerous such situations while she was with her daughter. Wolford described one such strange meetings as follows. We came around a bend, and on this trail behind our cabin and standing in the dappled shade of a tree were an adult Sasquatch and his much smaller companion. I couldn't have moved if I wanted to. With my 3-year-old daughter by my side, I stood frozen in place until the adult broke eye contact. He cocked his head and looked down at the fur coat I was wearing as if to say, "What kind of animal are you?" At that point, my instincts kicked in. I spoke softly when I told Autumn to turn around and walk, honey, don't run. When she was safely out of sight, I turned and followed. The 2 Sasquatch never moved. When we returned to our cabin, we crawled into bed. My husband was livid when he came home from work because there was no wood to burn. I told him we were sick because I had no other excuse for being in bed. I did not remember that meeting on the trail for over 20 years. What I remember most is the eyes, full of intelligence. They were about twice the size of my own, and no whites were visible. The color was brown, but they had a greenish tint and were covered with some sort of convex lens, like a cat. They were not the eyes of an animal. I had the feeling they looked deep into my soul. Much of this was intertwined with numerous other strange occurrences, such as mired lights anomalies that appeared in the forest, and Wolford claims that when Sasquatch appeared, they were surrounded by these orbs of wreaths of tiny lights the size of fireflies orbiting their heads and shoulders. She describes one such incident as follows. One night, I was looking out the kitchen window and I saw the tall, dark form of a Sasquatch walking down the path towards the river. Surrounding his head and upper torso were tiny, twinkling white lights. When I tapped on the window, the lights went out like someone had flipped a switch, and he was swallowed in darkness. Aside from the mysterious lights and Bigfoot encounters, Wilford claims she was frequently visited by a spectral elderly Native American male she calls the Dreamwalker. In the past, this stranger led her on adventures into the past, teaching her about Bigfoot's history in the valley and about the native Chinook tribe beliefs and way of life. Excursions, she says. These journeys, for the most part, were quite disturbing, for they showed me the fate of both the natives and the Sasquatch as they were pushed farther into the forest or violently disposed of. I was given hope for the future of Sasquatch in the form of Dreamwalker's last words to me. Remember all I have shown you and teach your young ones. I will not be here to remind you. Make sure the children believe in what they cannot touch or see. To one of you, a girl child has been born. She has the sunbeams in her hair. One day I will come to her as I have come to you. She too will learn the way of our people and Skookum. It did not occur to me at the time that he was describing my daughter Autumn. As to who Dreamwalker is, I will answer you thus. In one of our later journeys, it was the present time. He led me down the path behind Udi's cabin. I walked around a curve on the path behind the huge rotting logs that had been deposited by some ancient flood, and there stood the adult Sasquatch I now know I had met on the path. 1 minute he was there, then the next Dreamwalker stood in his place. That answers the question for me, but I leave it to others to decide for themselves. With so many bizarre happenings around them, one might assume Wolford believes Bigfoot is a spiritual being or maybe an alien, but she appears to believe otherwise, preferring to believe they are an unknown form of prehistoric man, although she entertains alternative ideas. Taking into account all of the other phenomena observed on the land, Wolford was asked her view on whether the Bigfoot she had been seeing was connected to aliens and a UFO phenomenon, to which she responded, "I have thought long and hard on this question. I don't know that there is a connection, but I wouldn't rule it out. The fact that we experienced both along with many other anomalies during our time in the valley could lead one to that conclusion. But the fact that so many strange things happen in one place could be caused by something else entirely. There are so many things that science seems to ignore or can't explain. I've looked into possibilities of a vortex in that area or a junction of ley lines. Native Americans have looked at certain areas near Mount Rainier as sacred for centuries." The writer goes on to say that she had descriptively written about her experiences in an encounter with the Bigfoots in the book titled Valley of the Skookum, 4 Years of Encounters with Bigfoot. It remains to be seen, and for the time being, the case of Sally Shepard Wolford is one of the most in-depth and weird Bigfoot contactee claims around, regardless of whether any of it is true. Okay, so it would appear that Sally has also written another book called Visit by the Forest People. I am not going to leave any links because I don't want to favor any particular book companies out there. So just go ahead and look up Sally Shepard Wolford if you are interested in reading that book. I know I will definitely pick it up. I'm very curious about it. And on that note, let me know what your favorite Sasquatch, Bigfoot books that you've read that you've really liked. The other thing that kind of struck me as odd is I think I might have read her daughter's book. Her daughter's name is autumn, and I have a book, probably one of the first books that I personally bought on Bigfoot, and it's called Enoch, A Bigfoot Story, and it is by Autumn Williams. I am guessing this is her daughter. She's also from Washington State. I mean, what are the coincidences? I never looked to see whether or not there is a connection between the two, because I've just recently found the article, and I've just, as of today, made the connection that I have a book by a person named Autumn that also lives in Washington. So in any case, I will also leave the book cover to that one in here so you can take a look at it and decide if you would like to read that book. So guys, on that note, that is going to be it for today. It doesn't look like this is going to be that short of a video after all. I knew the article was long. I just didn't know how long it was. But I found this story truly amazing. And like I said, I'm really curious as to what else has happened to this family. Obviously, this article was just a highlight of some of the things that that they've experienced, but the book is going to be way more granular. So on that note, I'm going to leave it off here. I still need to edit this later on today, but right now I've got to run out and buy a birthday gift for a 4-year-old and get ready for this party. So I hope you guys have a fabulous weekend. As you know, it is Saturday today. I always record on Saturdays, and I have it pre-scheduled for Sundays. And on that note as well, please don't forget to head to the communities tab and vote on whether you would like to see a live stream. And depending upon what the results are going to be, I'm going to let that run for a couple of, I don't know, a couple of weeks maybe. And then we'll see the results. And after which I will decide whether I'm going to do a hiking live stream during the day, or whether I'm just going to come on for about an hour or so in my home and just have a casual conversation, introduce myself, I guess, a little bit more formally. I know some of you know who I am and etc., know my story. Others may not because they've just recently joined. But in any case, yeah, we'll figure out how that's going to happen. So don't want to drag this on. So I hope you guys have a fabulous weekend. Again, if you have an encounter story, it does not have to be of a Bigfoot, Sasquatch. It could be anything. It could be a ghost, paranormal, UFO, whatever it happens to be. Please, if you want to share your story, go ahead and send that to OntarioCyrptids@gmail.com, and I would be more than honored to share your story on this channel. And again, thank you all for listening until the end. I truly appreciate it. Please hit that like button on your way out and smash that subscribe button. And also, why don't you hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with my channel uploads. And I almost forgot, happy Mother's Day to all of you moms out there in the OC community. Have a great weekend, and I hope to see you all next week right here on Ontario Cryptids.